You join us here for an unusual leaders' debate. Today, we have the leaders of Scotland and Catalonia, who both want independence from their host countries, England and Spain, respectively. Between them is an EU representative, Jean-Claude Juncker, here to discuss how a breakup of states would impact the EU and European community. We have brought them here to discuss why they want to go it alone, their history, and their independence referendums. So, firstly, we want to look at the history that is driving independence. Miss Sturgeon, why do you want an independent Scotland?
Well, if you look back at our history, us Scots did a fine job of being independent. We were independent until 1800. We want independence as we feel that the full powers we received in the 1979 referendum are not suitable for the country we want to become. So I believe that Scotland will be better off independent.
And now, Mr. Piedmont, looking at the history of Catalonia, why do you want to become independent?
It's quite simple. As a country, we were happily independent until the early 1700s when we joined Spain. However, as we maintained all our previous privileges, we have a strong national culture and a separate language. The Generalitat, our own government, has been in operation since 1931, and the rights to autonomy do not suit the long-term plans of the Catalonian people. We want out.
So now let's open it up to the floor. Mrs. May, why would independence be a step backwards for Scotland in your opinion?
We've been over this multiple times in various debates. The UK is stronger with Scotland and Scotland stronger in the UK.
How? The Scottish people feel oppressed under the UK government. I mean, we have a big oil field which we could base our entire economy on, which currently gets sent down to London. We would be a prosperous economy without the UK's control.
We have done study after study. English people want Scotland to stay. Scotland would become economically stronger and safer if it stayed in the UK.
That's funny, as we found that support for independence is at the highest ever level. Aside from that, we have a strong national identity and a rich and varied culture which we can capitalise on. We can agree with this. Catalonia also has a very strong national identity, as can be seen from the recent referendum result. With our own language, a fascinating culture, and a strong economy, we can easily become independent.
Well, first of all, the referendum was totally illegal. In the past year, levels of attachment for Catalonia is fading, and more people than ever are identifying as Spanish rather than Catalonian.
That's only because there's no support from Brussels.
Well, I don't want a situation where tomorrow the European Union is made up of 95 different states.
Whereas the Scottish referendum was totally legal, and turns out the Scottish people don't want to be independent after all.
Well, now, because of Brexit, the Scottish people are pushing for independence so we can rejoin the European Union.
That's wrong. According to a recent study, your people don't support your views and people aren't in favour of independence like they used to be. Anyway, of the 46% of people who voted for independence, 21% of them were pro-Brexit and 41% wanted the EU's powers cut.
Anyway, you won't get easy access to the EU. It will take a long time, and we may not even allow it after all. I hope you're listening to this PG-MOP. Life as an independent state isn't easy.
Well, we'll have a better time of it than you. We contribute to 20% of Spain's GDP. You'll be the one with less money and less international support.
Well, actually, most of the international community do not accept the result of the referendum. Anyway, a recent survey shows that most people want Catalonia to be a region of Spain, not an independent state.
Well, actually, I think you should talk things through with Puigdemont. Don't discount the referendum and the opinions and identity of the Catalonia's people.
So, what is it about the Scottish identity that supports your cause for independence?
Well, firstly, the Scottish people have a huge sense of pride in Scotland. Our culture, our language and our way of life makes us different from the rest of the UK. As well as this, our liberal approach to immigration should mean that we have control of our own policies and borders.
Don't bring Brexit into this. Don't forget that the SNP did badly in the last general election, showing that support for nationalism cause is dwindling.
Says she that lost her majority.
Okay then, and Piedmont, what is it about the Catalonian identity that supports separation from Spain?
Well, our language is an essential part of identity. As well as that, we believe that independent Catalonia would be able to tailor our economic and welfare policies to be more beneficial to our people. Anyway, we don't feel as connected to Spain as we once were.
But why do you want to break away from us? Is it all really worth it?
For you, maybe it is not, but for us, it is a chance to make the Catalonian voice to be heard on a national and international front.
Well, good luck trying. Like I've already said, you're going to find it hard to join us in our project. In the extremely unlikely event that you were to gain independence, you must reapply to join the EU, and even then, there is no guarantee of us accepting you.
And where would it stop? If every region that feels disconnected from the state pushes for sovereignty, then as Juncker said, there will be 95 mini-states that don't get along, as can be seen from this map which I brought along today.
But what's so wrong with that? Surely it'll cause more conflict and violence in the long run, to deny people what they want and to restrict their freedom and expression of their identity.
But dividing people will further cause more tensions. Just because you feel more Scottish or more Catalonian does not mean you should become independent. That implies that you are against the English and the Spanish, and surely separating yourself will only lead to more conflict. While we shouldn't suppress our identity, why does that mean you want to forget your history and divide us even further?
There are many areas of the UK that have their own identity, but if they all became independent, then basically every county would be its own state in theory. While most counties could not support themselves as a state, it still raises important questions. For example, Cornwall wants to be independent because they have their own culture, language and history.
But they have no chance of being independent. They don't have the economy to support themselves, whereas we do. So why would we not try to become an independent state? The Scottish people have the culture, language and long history. Being independent would not dismiss our history within the UK, but instead highlight the pride we have in our own culture.
Okay, so it's time to wrap this debate up. Let's have a few final words from everyone to finish off. Juncker, as a central figure to this debate, do you wish to add anything further?
So the UK and Spain are both prominent states within the EU, and as one of the leaders of this supranationalist governing body, Scottish and Catalonian nationalism could cause the collapse of these two great powers within the EU.
But why can't we celebrate our own identity and still be a great power in the EU? Just because we want independence and our own sovereignty does not mean that we have to forget about our history and strong alliances with Spain and the UK.
The alliance will be weakened by Catalonia and Scotland becoming independent. In our case, we would lose 20% of our GDP, and this independent movement has already caused a lot of tension and conflicts between those who identify as Catalonian and those who identify as Spanish.
We won't stop pushing for independence until we get it. Scotland should be for the Scottish, and one day that will happen.
But in both cases, nationalism support has been in and out of favour. In the case of Scotland, it was a close majority, so there would still be a large proportion of people who would not be supportive of the outcome. And it's not like the general election held every 5 years. Once you've made your mind up, you can't go back on it, for better or for worse.
Well, that concludes a feisty debate. The push for independence remains strong in both Scotland and Catalonia, who both believe that their strong culture and heritage should be grounds to become their own nation state. The states that they belong to, however, believe that together is best, and the EU seconds this view. Will we see these nations becoming their own states in the future? Only time will tell. Thank you for joining us today for this Leaders' Independence debate.